So my topic today is connecting the dots. And the verse that I use for that, or the background for that thought, is Galatians 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever man sows, that shall he also reap. For he who sows to the flesh will reap corruption, and he who sows in the Spirit will reap life everlasting. And then verse 9, let us not be getting tired of doing good things, because we will reap one day if we don't lose heart. So looking at connecting the dots, we all in our life go through a lot of experiences in life that we have a hard time placing sometimes. They don't make sense to us, and it's difficult to connect the dots. And by connecting the dots, I mean, how do I see God in my story? How do I see God from way back maybe till today? How do I see that connection? And sometimes you reap what others have sown. You have not sown your own crop. And I'll show you one in a minute here, but your belief system that you grew up with has been planted into you by your parents, your church, your school, your neighbors. A lot of that, when you were young, you had no control of that. And yet you have a belief system within you that's very strong. It controls you. It gives you thoughts and feelings. It's the foundation of what we stand on. So some of that is not necessarily our own, but as we grow up, we create our own faith and stand on our own legs. Our answers are in our journey. Our answers are in our journey. They're not necessarily when it's all done. So I'd like this morning to use a story of Joseph. Those of you who read the Bible are familiar with this story in Genesis. And it's a story that has a lot of twists and turns, a lot of things that don't make sense, a lot of things that are blanks missing. But just to give you a quick snapshot of that story, Jacob was the father of Joseph. Jacob had two wives. He wanted Rachel, but Laban, his father-in-law, gave him Leah. Because she was older, he said, the older one has to get married first. Let's do this right. And for some reason, I don't know how, he didn't recognize it. Was it Rachel not at the wedding? How is this possible? Did they have exactly the same voice? Did they not talk? Like, it's a lot of mysteries in that story. It doesn't make sense to me. He didn't know until next morning. Unbelievable. I don't know if he wasn't very sharp in that area or what was going on, but it was just, it's a weird story. And so finally he gets Rachel as well. He works another 7 years, but he gets Rachel in the beginning of those 7 years, I understand. So he had the two wives for the last 7 years. And we know the story that Rachel couldn't have kids in the beginning, but Leah had lots of kids, and she thought by having all these boys, and Jacob would be very happy, but he wasn't. He wanted Rachel to have kids, and so one day she is pregnant, and she gets a boy, and it's Joseph, and he is on cloud nine. It's his favorite son. He has Benjamin a little bit later, but he's got a favorite son, this Joseph guy. And all his brothers know that this is going on, and they're getting very jealous. And then to top it off, Joseph has some dreams where in this dream, the whole family bows down to him. It just makes it a lot worse. And they hate this guy, Joseph. And so one day, while he's in his teens, Jacob sends Joseph to visit his brothers who are herding sheep. And it's quite a ways away. He has to look for them, can't find them right away, but he eventually finds them. And then as Joseph comes walking, the brothers say, let's kill him. They hate that dreamer guy. Let's kill him. And so they decide to kill him, except the oldest brother says, let's rather sell him. Let's rather sell him, not kill him. So they end up selling him to a trader that comes by on his way to Egypt. That's what they do. But then Joseph is put under Pharaoh. He's right underneath Pharaoh. The king Pharaoh is at the top, right under Pharaoh. And he controls the country. And there's a lot more to the story, but there's some visions that he interprets of of some fat cows and some lean cows, and how there's going to be 7 good years, then 7 bad years. And Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge of this grain, collecting the grain for the 7 years. And if I remember correctly, he collects 20% of the grain every year. And so by the time these 7 good years are done, he's got a ton of grain. And so it says, eventually all the people around him all come to him for grain. And so Joseph's oldest brothers come too. They're from a distance. They're coming for grain. And Joseph immediately recognizes them, but they don't recognize Joseph. So there's a lot in that story that goes on between the two of them. And eventually the brothers go home and say that Joseph is alive. We've seen him. And his father is delighted. Because he sorrowed big time for this guy, Joseph, that he was gone. They had taken his clothes and pretend that animals had killed him. And the father believed it. And he was very, very sad for a very, very long time. But now they eventually join and they meet, and there's a happy reunion. And then eventually his father was old and he dies. And that's where I'm going to start reading. In Genesis 50, verse 14, his father has now died. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, and he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we have done." And so they're really, really scared now. And then, verse 16, I don't know if this message is real or if his brothers were very creative. Maybe they made this up, I don't know. But it says, "So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, 'Before your father died, he commanded, saying, Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sins, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father.' And Joseph wept when they spoke this to him." So this was a very deep-rooted issue with all the brothers. Verse 18, "Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face and said, 'Behold, we are your servants.'" By the way, by the time these 7 lean years were over, Joseph owned all the cattle, all the people were slaves, and all the grain. He owned basically everything. So it's an amazing story. And then in verse 19, this is where he connected the dots. Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God." He connected the dots. He looked back to where he was today, and he connected the dots. He said, "I'm in the place of God. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." God meant it for good. He connected the dots in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. If Joseph had not connected the dots, he could have become very bitter. But he connected the dots. He saw God in his whole story. I am convinced there were many times during the next 15 years, because he was about 30 years old when he began to work under Pharaoh, and he was in prison for several years. I know there were many times in that story where he says, "This does not make sense. This is not right. I did not go after Pharaoh's wife. The wife blamed him wrongly, and this is not right," but he was imprisoned. So I'm sure he had trouble connecting the dots for a period of time. But when he connected the dots, you can clearly see there's no bitterness in him, because he saw God in his life. He says, "I'm in the place of God." All of us, we can connect the dots much easier through it. But in the middle of it, it's very hard to connect dots. But if we could connect the dots as we went through an issue, we would not become so bitter and angry so many times. Joseph connected the dots. So our answer is in the journey. I'll name a number of verses and thoughts just to show you how this could happen in life today. 1 John 4:18 says there's no fear in love. Perfect love casts out all fear, because fear is torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. So can we connect the dots when we are fearful, we are anxious, maybe we're dealing with anxiety? Can we connect the dots and say that we don't trust God? That's why I'm fearing. If we fully trusted God, whom we love, the person that you love dearly, you trust. You can't have a perfect love with someone that you don't trust. But could it be that when I'm fearful, when something's happening and I get afraid, and what about the economy, and what about our future, and what about our kids, and how's this all going to work out, and I become fearful? Could that be because I don't trust my Heavenly Father with today? Is it actually a direct connection? What if we connected the dots? If I'm scared I'm going to die, or if I'm scared we're going to have an accident, or like, where does this fear come from? Because it says fear is a spirit, and here it says perfect love casts out all fear, because fear has torment. And we know that's true. One reason why we read this book is to discern those kind of thoughts. And we discern, where does this thought coming from? Does this thought, this fear line up with the Bible? What does the Bible say about fear? That's why we need to read the book. We need to know this book. Read through it. And so you're prepared, because the time will come, if it hasn't already, it will come where you'll become fearful, or you'll become really scared, or what if God has forgotten me, or what if God doesn't love me? You have those fears. Get familiar with the Bible. Or belief in God is very big to us, because it gives us feelings. That's what makes me feel. If I'm afraid there's a bear outside the door, then I will feel afraid. Whatever I believe, I feel. So it's very important. I know one thing, that when I fell in love with God about 10, 12 years ago, my depression left me. And I think a lot of things go away when our trust level goes up. Falling in love with God for me was basically, I began to trust Him with my life, with everything. But in the midst of a storm, you don't see it. Later we can connect the dots. But what if we could do it in the middle of the storm? David was a man who was praised by God as a man after his own heart, had great things going on, did really well. Then he took Bathsheba, and he had a very bitter experience. He connected the dots. Because of what he had done, his baby died. He connected the dots. He had a lot of anguish and pain. We often blame others for what we're going through, because I can't connect the dots. I've done it many times. We blame a person or somebody or the government or whatever we want to name, maybe my health, and I blame it and say, because I can't connect the dots. Because we as believers, Jesus is always with us. Always with us. So He's never absent from your story. He's always there, even though we can't see it. Mature people count the dots or connect the dots. What if I don't have victory in my life? Well, why don't I have victory in my life? What have I sown that I don't have victory in my life? It said very clearly, if we sow to the flesh, we will reap corruption. Lack of victory, defeat is corruption. So I can look back and say, if I sow to the flesh, I don't have victory. It's going to be a given. If I sow to the Spirit, I will have a life everlasting. So let's connect the dots. Don't just say, well, I'm weak. Everybody fails. That's normal. That's life. If Jesus died for your victory, then it's available for us today. Let's connect the dots and see why that is. If we connect the dots, in some areas we can do it really well, other areas we can't. But if we can, then we immediately take ownership of what's happening in our lives. James 1 says, James has a bondservant. He's a bondservant. Paul also says he's a bondservant. That word bondservant means once you have been a slave and you've been released, you've served your time, you can go home, and you choose to go back to your boss, to your owner, and say, I'm going to serve you for life. I'm going to continue to be your slave, but it's going to be a free will slave. I choose to be your slave. That's a bondservant. And just reading a few verses here of what that was about, it says, but if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. So in some cases, the whole family was sold, and so the mom and the kids were still slavery, so he would go back for that reason. And then if that happens, it says, then his master shall bring him to the judge. He shall also bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. So they pierced a hole into the ear. And also, some historians say they also branded him. They had a brand for the person. Some say they branded him in the ear, but it's not clear that it was only in the ear. So anyone who walked in town with a hole in his ear was a bondservant. They were marked for life. They were going to work for free for life. And it says, James, it says, I'm a bondservant. And then verse 2, he says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work in you, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. He is saying, look at the pattern, look at the dots. If we are tested and we allow patience to have its work in us, we allow it to change us and mold us, then we'll be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So what if that is so hard and it is still true? It is still true. Another thing, we have a lot of widows in this church, and I've often wondered if the widows of this church are the ones that are praying for the church more than anyone else, and that this church largely stands on its legs because of the widows. They come together every week. Could it be that they are actually the backbone of this church? We should connect the dots. We should connect dots. Maybe it's not me or Pastor Abe that has the biggest influence here. God, what's the fruit going to be? Sowing into His presence, what are the fruits going to be? If we spend time in prayer, we spend time reading the Bible, what are the fruits going to be? Like we can kind of see what's happening. If I'm very familiar with the Word of God, it helps me in every area of life, in every decision that I'm going to make. Adam and Eve didn't connect the dots. They ate of the fruit. They said nothing will happen. Later they said, oops. Then they connected the dots. So since that day, mankind is still trying to get back to the Garden of Eden. Still trying to get back to the peace that they walked in, the open heaven that they walked in. We still want the same thing today. Judas didn't connect the dots. He betrayed Jesus. He saw the money. He didn't connect the dots. He said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to have money. But he was very sad. Peter denied Jesus, and he wept bitterly. He didn't connect the dots. So if we train our children to be godly children, we can connect the dots. They're going to become godly people. If we don't, if our children are rebellious, that means we probably misconnecting the dots. And we all do some of this. We all do some of this. But can we connect the dots instead of blaming someone or blaming your parents or grandparents or the Kornelsen line, or like we have all these excuses that we have that we quickly go to. But I am my own person between me and God. I have my own life. My parents aren't responsible for me. I need to connect my own dots. What if we could connect the dots as we go through life? I believe there will be many dots that we will never connect in this side of heaven. We are trying, but there are some stories in our life that we cannot figure out. We cannot connect the dots. That do not make sense. Maybe some of you have had an accident and you're suffering the results of an accident for years. How do you connect those dots? Is God in that story? Or are you on your own? I encourage you, and I'm encouraging myself too, to connect the dots. I'm sure one day when we get to heaven, we will say, now it makes sense. I know we'll all have that. And we'll see how over here God intervened for me, and I didn't even realize it. And, this was a supernatural connection over here that I had with that person. And, just at the right time, this happened to me. And I got that job just when I needed that job. And I will see the whole story. But my challenge to you is this morning, and to myself as well, if we don't connect dots, we become bitter, and we become angry at people, at society. Some more verses. John 15:5 says, I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. So it has a promise, but a condition. So can we connect the dots? If we abide in him, he abides in us, it says we will bear much fruit. So if I don't have fruit in my life, can I connect the dots? Why don't I have fruit in my life? Could it be that I'm not abiding in him, and he's not abiding in me? Verse 10 says, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Then it says, these things have I spoken to you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. So if my joy is not full, if I don't have joy in my life, can I connect the dots? There may be a reason why I'm not joyful. And what is that reason? Could it be that I'm not abiding in the vine? And we can use 100 examples, but I'm just picking out a few, just to give us an idea on how this works. But do we connect the dots? Sometimes I don't. And then I blame others very often. Psalm 1:1, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of ungodly, nor stands in the paths of sinners. And then it says, verse 2, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and his law does he meditate day and night. Then he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season. His leaf will not wither, always lots of moisture, and whatever he does will prosper. Can we connect the dots? There's tons of promises in this word, but they have conditions to them. They're not a given to us. So if I don't bear fruit, if I don't feel like I'm contributing to society, I don't feel like I'm contributing to individuals, or I don't feel like I'm bearing fruit, could it be that I'm not delighting in the Lord? Can we connect the dots? A counselor told me years ago, you do what you do for a reason. And I've never forgotten that phrase. You do what you do for a reason. It might be, whether good or bad, doesn't matter, but we do what we do for a reason. And that statement at that time gave me a lot of hope, because I said, if that is true, then we can all change. Because if my belief system is controlling me, and I do what I do for a reason, I can change my belief and I can be a different person. And I got a lot of hope for people and for myself. And I think today I see it more than ever. But we never change if we don't connect the dots. We need to go back and look at and connecting the dots. If you have a great marriage, why? Can you connect the dots? If you don't have a good marriage, can you connect the dots? What good seed did you sow? If I'm fired from a job all the time, can I connect the dots? And say, it's not the stupid boss. I need to connect the dots. Why am I fired all the time? It's a pattern. Why am I fired? And I will see there's a reason why I'm being fired. But as long as I blame my boss for being fired, I will never take ownership. and that can never change. Connecting the dots helps us to prevent future issues. If you watch YouTube and you feel like a failure because they are all so perfect on YouTube and we're not, can you connect the dots? What makes you feel unhappy? If you seeded all these seeds and now you feel unhappy, can we connect the dots? I planted some trees this year on my yard, and I went to the nursery and I said, I need a tree that grows fast. Because I don't want to wait 100 years to enjoy a tree. I'm past 60 now. I said, I need a tree that I can enjoy in my lifetime. I said, I'm counting the dots. I want a tree that I can enjoy. I love trees. So give me a fast-growing tree. Well, they said this one and this one and this one. They grow fast. Okay, one of those 3 trees is what I'm going to buy. So that's exactly what I did. And in life, we do a lot of that. So when we, instead of wondering, why is this happening to me, if I could say, let's go back a bit and see, what have I sown? What have I sown? And this verse, most of my life has been a very negative verse. You'll reap what you sow. But it can be an extremely positive verse. You can sow positive seeds and you will get a positive crop. That's what we read in John 15. Abide in him and he abides in you. You will bear much fruit. It's not maybe, no, it says you will. So this can be an extremely positive verse for us. Wise people connect the dots. Foolish people don't. Or why are you always short of money? You might have a job, but it's never enough. Can we connect the dots? That I'm spending more than I'm making. Do we connect the dots? Or is it that stingy boss who won't give me more money? There are so many ideas, things that we can mention. Or a person that's not been faithful in his marriage and now the marriage is tough. Can you connect the dots? Or are you just saying, well, they should forgive? The Bible says you're supposed to forgive. Can you connect the dots? When you connect the dots, we take ownership. Or you say, people don't like me. Connect the dots. Why not? Or you have a lot of friends. Connect the dots. You have a lot of friends because, and you fill in the blank. Sowing and reaping is a real thing. If you teach children godly character, they will likely embrace it when they get older. It says, thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Is that true? Is that true? When we're not at peace, is it because we're not abiding in him? So I just want to encourage us while the team comes up for a closing song. Are we connecting the dots? I know when you're in a big turmoil, it's very, very difficult to connect the dots. Because you're just trying to survive. But what if we could look back at least and see how God was in the story? Because their answer is in the journey. Or his answer is in the journey. And all of us will have issues in life from time to time. And rather than getting depressed or anxious or start to worry, the Bible actually tells us how to be joyful. The Bible tells us how to be victorious. How about we use the Bible in that case and connect the dots? A person that's dedicated to the Lord, dedicated to spending time with him, you will sense it. You can connect the dots. Let's pray. God, you're a good Father who's given us so many verses that we can read today. We all have many Bibles. We can read today and we can understand and we can see how this sowing and reaping really works. And Lord, you are inviting us to sow good seeds so we have a good crop. In fact, you're saying you want us to sow good seeds so our joy will be full. So that we can represent you accurately. Lord, give us the grace to look back at our life and connect the dots. Lord, I pray for those that are going through a severe struggle right now in their lives and have a real challenge connecting any dots. Nothing makes sense. Lord, give us a faith in you at a time like that where we cannot connect the dots, where we could relax and trust in you because you're still a good Father. We're in a good place. Lord, I pray that all of us could see sowing and reaping as a positive thing, not as condemnation, but as hope and for a future. God, we love you, and you love us. We're in a good place. In Jesus' name, amen.